Welcome! We hopping straight into it. Welcome to Let Me Out Productions and the Top Brass Dow, Taco Tuesday. I have one last taco that I'm going to be nomming for the phenomenon. And good, we're live. We're rolling. Welcome! We hopping straight into it. Welcome to Let Me Out Productions and the Top Brass Dow. Okay. Let's get chat on screen. Pop out chat. Pop out chat. Grab the link for the pop out chat. And I don't want infinite window. Go away. We're going to listen to a Google LLM podcast. They're actually really funny, so I have a good time with them. If I don't drone out the voices by now, you know? But they really help bring what we're doing to life. So we're going to listen to a Google LLM podcast talk about the world of the BSofA, and then I'll click around the wiki as they talk about each team. And some of them are more wide open and the foundation of the team and how the team started. Some of them, I wrote that material, and then we build off of what I wrote. But I'm not that much of a tyrant. But I did have ideas about all of these brands. So, and as we build this world, you know, I have a team of artists ready to go. I'm saying I hold off on us. Don't do stuff for free. I do this stuff, but don't do stuff for free. When the Lord shifts this logo out in 1967, somebody else will do the logo. I hope they build off of this design inherently, but then they adapt it for Boston in the 60s, in the late 60s. Okay. The audio works. I was going to do the browser here. Bibbidi bobbidi boop. And when we stream, I might even do it on stream. We'll see. I don't know if my computer's kind of old, I'm realizing. So without further ado, why are you so big? We will put this down here, and we will float the window. Let's see how that looks on stream. That's fun, right? That's kind of fun. And then what we can do here, this is why they call it Windows. Oh, shut up. I did not realize my Chrome was open this whole time. Perfect. You see that? You see that, chat? Oh no, I messed up already. Look at that hedge work there. Great news. I guess I can't go beyond the border there. Okay, without further ado, let's let these guys get started.
Imagine a world where the actual literal Pentagon covertly purchases a professional basketball franchise just to run, like a massive psychological operation.
Oh, wow.
Right, like just to distract the American public from Cold War intelligence leaks. Or imagine a timeline where Eva Peron, yes, Evita herself, is standing in some Rust Belt arena in 1939.
Yeah, just whipping a crowd of Pittsburgh steelworkers into a complete frenzy over a basketball game.
Exactly. Or, you know, a reality where a revolutionary Haitian general decides to just completely overwrite global cultural narratives by partnering with an upstate New York lawyer to invent a professional sports syndicate.
I mean, it sounds like a fever dream. It sounds like someone literally threw a world history textbook into a blender with a basketball, hit puree, and just poured it all out onto
Thank you. That's a huge
tabletop
compliment to
role-playing
me.
game board.
It really does. And that is exactly why we are here today. If you were just tuning in, you might expect a historical deep dive to be neat. You expect a timeline to be linear, right?
Right, like you dig down a few feet, you find a Roman coin, you brush off the dirt, and the historian is just like, there it is.
Yeah, exactly. First century. But when you step into the world of the Basketball Syndicate of America, the BSofA, that expectation of order is just completely shattered. We are looking at a lore landscape that is, honestly, it's like digging up a time capsule that was buried by a time traveler.
Right, because you are finding historical figures in places they absolutely shouldn't be, doing things they never did in our reality.
Yeah, it is the absolute definition of narrative muddy waters. And I am so deeply here for it. So welcome to the Syndicate, everyone. We are your guides through the beautiful chaos of the Omega Cluster universe.
I am Sloppa Ray Gurjeetott, but you can definitely call me Sloppa Ray Gee.
And I am Janky Circuit, though you can absolutely call me J Serk.
And together, we're officially introducing ourselves to you as the avatars of Libra.
That is right. Libra, the defining basketball god of the Allentown Oats.
Representing the mind element today, naturally, because the sheer volume of narrative processing power we're going to need to get through this timeline is just staggering.
Janky Circuit, we have a really monumental task ahead of us today.
We really do, Sloppa Ray Gee, because we are not just reading a wiki page today. Whether you are prepping your own fantasy lore franchise, claiming your notable fans in a press pass lore game, or you're just insanely curious about why a massively popular professional sports team is named after root vegetables.
Which is a very valid question, honestly.
Totally valid, but you are in the exact right place for this deep dive. We are going to explore the rich, bizarre, and just profoundly detailed history of the BSofA, from its noble 1939 origins all the way to the modern era.
And I think we need to start right at the top and explain exactly what we mean when we say press pass in the lore game, just so everyone is fully grounded.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Because this isn't just a fantasy sports league where you draft a point guard who gets you 30 points on a Tuesday. Right, there are no real-world stats here. Press Pass is this massive, intricate, completely community-driven simulation and role-playing universe. You, as a player, aren't just managing a roster, you are managing the narrative.
Exactly. You generate characters using this massive 7x7 alignment chart, mapping out their fundamental morals and their primary motives.
Yeah, and you claim roles like notable fan or ecosystem professional or proprietor guardian. You are actively manipulating the historical and cultural narrative of these franchises.
It's basically world building as a competitive sport. So when we talk about the history of the BSofA, we're talking about decades of collaborative, insanely detailed storytelling built by players and lore producers.
Right.
And the genesis of this entire universe is where we really need to begin, because the foundational mechanics of the league were established by two people you would never, ever expect to see in the same room.
Let alone the same boardroom. We are talking about the founding of the BSofA in 1939 by Gaius C, Bolin and Jacqueline Doucet. Let's really look at the weight of these two historical figures, because this sets the tone for everything. Gaius C. Bolin was a black lawyer from upstate New York. He was the first black graduate of Williams College. He was an absolute pioneer in navigating incredibly hostile legal and corporate environments.
And then you have his partner, Jacqueline Doucet. And Jay Serk, her inclusion in this lore is just a masterstroke of world building.
It really is.
She wasn't just a financial backer or, a silent partner. In the lore of this universe, Jacqueline Doucet was a former general in the Haitian Freedom Force.
Yes, she was.
Let's process the gravity of that for a second.
Yeah, please.
In the reality of the timeline,
I
she
wrote all
fought
this,
tooth
no
and nail
AI.
against the 1915 United States invasion of Haiti, sustaining a grueling...
In fact, I wrote all this so long ago. There's a 2K file where there's one of her great-grandsons that's playing on like a 2K18 roster. His name was Jacques Doucet, and he played for, oh my goodness. What was the team name? It's not in the show. But, I don't think I did any team name changes. I think I added a couple expansion franchises, but I kept all the real NBA teams. So in the sim that I did, he played for the Toronto Raptors. That's where her great-grandson played when I originally wrote. But anyway, you can see here that if my friends, wink wink, over at the Sacramento Kings get the bee out of their bonnet and live in actuality, they can Put Ruthie Bolton in charge of this character. Or Ruthie can put herself in charge of the character for $40. Co-publish The Economy, where labor is your property. Co-publish The Economy. Shove the duck up and sing on a bear. It's only a matter of time, folks. It's only a matter of time before that clicks and everything is smooth sailing, because everybody wants to see. If the thing is, even if they don't feel like other adults deserve labor as property and a functional economy that's built on those principles, they know the kids do. And we shouldn't build in any society where activity, effort, choices, published results, labor is enslaved. Do not defraud or rob your neighbor. Okay? Hopefully this is local Sacramento, right outside my backyard lettuce and not the weird stuff that's going around poisoning people. Real person, Gaius Bolin. You're so sloppy right now. My made-up character, Jacqueline Doucet. She may as well be real. She's been real in my head for 10 years. 10 years of work on this thing. I'm just putting it all out because I'm finally comfortable putting it all out. Because ain't nobody, you can't. You know what I mean? By the time anybody figures out how to copy or steal this and scale it themselves, like, they're just going to point a big old beacon back to me. I've been doing it for so long. Fuck decorum, duck the forum. I mean, just act like an idiot, especially on Twitter. And all of you guys will leave me alone. I'm kidding. There's some attention I do want. Uncle Flu teams have been released, everybody. Man, preparing a 60-team slate of history from 1916 on was tough work. Because it really is just a lot of spreadsheets and data entry. Anyway, let's let Janky Circuit and Sloppa Ray Gurjeetott take the wheel of the discussion. I may have to lay down because I did just eat, and usually 10 to 20 minutes after I eat, I have to get to work on pulling my intestines apart. But I was prepared because I wanted to do this on stream, and I always like to have some media while I eat. And I have coffee ready to go. So there's already coffee. And sometimes if I eat, especially these tacos from down the street, they're delicious. They keep raising the price on me though. Because a year ago they were $1 a taco, and now they're $1.75 a taco on Taco Tuesday. It's just like, yo, I don't know how much more I can take with the inflation. They were riding at $1.50 for a while. They just went up to $1.75 this week. So, to get my normal order, I had to dip $1 into my gas money. Man, y'all should be buying publishing titles. I am, disabled pretty bad. Just because I look a certain way doesn't mean my life reflects that. I'll tell you what, I'm blessed. I have some really great people. But this could kill me at any point in time, obviously. I've been cut from here to here, here to here, twice over here. Actually, it's been 3 times over here, and then 1 time on this side. That's really small on this side. It started getting better at the surgeries as time went on. Although the big long one from pelvis to sternum, that was from 2014. But I'm wearing collectively published merchandise. Let's see who co-published it, because they co-branded on the back. That's Queen Sheba Ethiopian restaurant here in Sacramento, 17th and Broadway. You have to come eat there. It's delicious food. Really healthy food. I eat there every day. Most well, not every day. I try to give my client a break. Although I do realize, I'm eating the excess, so it's not. I don't think I'm costing off the bottom line there. Especially me. I eat once a day. I eat one plate, and then I'm down. I was just explaining to a lawyer, oh, I got a lawyer for Social Security. I'm so happy. Oh my God, I'm so happy. If I could just stabilize for like a little while, we could really do something. All the assaults have pretty much stopped. I have to clarify record, and I'm doing that through product. I am doing that through product. Don't get me wrong, okay? But I do want to clarify something to everybody out there. My X account is performance art. The whole place turned to shit, and it's supposed to be reflective of the place. In fact, just today I was trying to do this as a space. Actually, I didn't want to put it on YouTube necessarily, but I don't think my account can host spaces. I think you got to pay for that now. Man, what happened to Twitter? You know what I mean? We're centralizing around YouTube and Instagram, and I know a lot of people still on TikTok. I've never really used TikTok. Not like that. I'm trying to get used. I'll post something. In fact, that would be a good use of time while this is playing.
Resistance until 1933. Let's process the gravity of that for a second.
Yeah, please.
In the reality of the timeline, she fought tooth and nail against the 1915 United States invasion of Haiti, sustaining a grueling resistance until 1933. She survived the devastating 1919 bombing campaigns, and she survived the horrific 1929 massacre in her hometown of Les Cayes. She was a tactical genius, a survivor, and a personal friend of the revolutionary Charlemagne Perrault.
Which begs the immediate question, why? Why do a battle-hardened revolutionary Haitian general and a trailblazing upstate New York lawyer decide to pour their souls into starting a 30-team professional basketball league in 1939? It feels like there should be this massive disconnect there.
Right, but there isn't, and this is where the mechanics of the game's lore are so profound.
I just want to be clear, both of these characters are literally available to own and collectively publish through publishing title. Right now for about $40 because the titles are cheap. Now I've software registered these characters for people who would like to table them. And that's Steven Jackson over at All the Smoke and Ruthie Bolton of the Press Pass Basketball Hall of Fame. She was the starting point guard of the Sacramento Monarchs when they won a championship, and we honor that because there's honestly a character that's, and I wouldn't say based on anybody in particular, but the Majesty are a mixed gender. All the teams are mixed gender professional basketball franchises, and the Sacramento Majesty won the championship in 2001, partially to heal a childhood wound, and then partially to homage. I think it was the 2005 Sacramento Monarchs that did win the championship. So Sacramento did win a championship in the 2000s. It just wasn't the Kings. And I think that needs to be celebrated and needs to be brought up as a big deal. Because now, as women's basketball is a premier product, and it's globally anticipated and celebrated, we have to look back at those days where there were. I want to give credit to Monarchs fans because they would fill out the place. 12,000 to maybe a sellout to 17,000 seat arena, but they routinely put 8,000, 12,000 butts in the seats and win games and go on deep playoff runs. And so that's the Sacramento Monarchs. And so the starting point guard of the Sacramento Monarchs is Ruthie Bolton. I don't think she's Haitian. But the whole thing is watch a little bit of Critical Role or a lot. It's entertaining. Watch Dimension 20. Watch these tabletop shows. There's a lot of people doing them. Watch sketch comedies as well, because we're sort of a hybrid thing there. You do the tabletop first to establish the prose, then you sketch moments from the prose into the archive. and those sketches become trading cards. And hopefully we can partner with a trading card company to help us get that done. And they become archive material for our mockumentary show. I think I'm going to write an email to the Documentary Now people and ask if I could do a stream and do some commentary on Documentary Now's first episode as like a pre-pilot to the pilot, so Showbiz can feel a little bit more comfortable with what my vision is and getting behind me on that. Look, I think a lot of folks are... I'm going to take a pause real quick to speak to Truth to Power real quick. My biggest problem, I think, with the show business industry is that unless there is a social benefit to not doing it, everybody will try to select somebody who they feel is uppity, and then everybody colludes on punishing the uppity person. Okay? Now, I'm not a victim. I've been through... It's just I was selected for this really early in my career by powerful people. That's the issue. And so the social benefit and the business benefit of keeping me in the corner and keeping me silent, keeping my work buried and all of that stuff seems more beneficial than letting my work just have a clean shot at people's minds. But as time goes on, it's clear that the product structure guy that's been doing that for 2 decades... Okay. This is not a big deal, what I'm about to bring up, but it is also a big deal. Okay? I'm not the main character of the product of streaming. I am objectively the start of one person's career in streaming, and that's Jeff Waldorf. I don't think he'll mind. I don't think he'll be all mad. He won't try to bury my business with lies. Because he was a guest on TYT Community, and then after episode 3, he became the host of TYT Community. Good job to Jeff. That's taking the reins. Look at him go. So he kept this going and 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 going. And like, he's the Hassan that everybody thinks Hassan is. So he's buried as well, but not really. Look at him. Look at him, like, wow. And this channel started off as TYT Community with like 50 followers, 50 subscribers. Handed him the keys. Yeah, I wish she'd go back in and change my name. Kamani David Okira is the full name. David is as a state assigned name to the foster program. And while I'm appreciative and will express gratitude for my parents, especially as they enter their old age, I want everybody to understand that Kamani Okira are the only 2 choices that my biological mother ever got to apply to me. Ever. That's it. Okay, the government got involved, and they did the Handmaid's Tale thing. That's why I can't get through 2 episodes of that fucking show. That's not some dystopia, that's just my life. What the hell? I can't get through 2 episodes of that show. Because I can't get through and see the show SEE, the Apple show, with Jason Momoa and Bautista is very good, but I had the same struggle there because it's like, my dad's going blind. My foster dad, he's going blind. So this has been a slow process happening for a while. So even when the show came out, I was sensitive to what his struggles are, because the way we discuss it. The window of visibility I call information, and I ask him how much information can he see compared to the full range, and he's not honest with me. But it also is a moot point because these days, this day and age, in 2026, there's these he's got cornea problems from glaucoma, and so his corneas are failing again, and that's because he keeps on getting cornea transplants from dead people, and now they can fish a couple stem cells out of his bone marrow and grow some corneas in a petri dish, or however it works. It's probably not like that, but they do the stem cell thing. It's like $20,000. I've never made any money from the stuff that I publish into the economy, and part of that is clout, part of that is network. I'm an oft exploited fool. And in this case, I'm also exploited, but it doesn't matter. Because in this case, my publication is notarized, and here it is also notarized. It's just none of you give a shit. October 24th, 2012. It's not exactly compelling, but this is, again, before there's interface.
We'll play a little snippet of that here for you guys.
So this is chat down here. I'm the host, and instead of doing chat on screen, like what you got down over there, with the scroll that nobody's participating in ever, they're on screen with me. So this is more of a Kai Cenat format, because he always has other people on stream in the room with him. He's always putting other people on and elevating other people. This is not sit there and throw tantrums and yell at people in chat and, get off on banning people and creating social hierarchy out of everything that you perceive. So, but this is the foundation of streaming as a product. How about that? A streaming show. So, we'd stream for an hour, and then we cut it into deliverables. And then I would actually go through and cut out, like I'd do real editing and, get in there and get the nitty gritty out. So these 20-minute segments we cut down to 9, 8, 6-minute segments, etc. And I did this for a while, and then after episode 3, am I in episode 3?
Matrix Community Ambassador. My name is Kamani David. With me today, I have Jeff.
My name didn't change. It just added my, I guess it would be my tribal name or ancestral name, Okira, as the family name. David's also part of my family name, but it comes before Okira. Shout out to Bose, because she's awesome. Weathered a lot of the same stuff that I have, and is way more consistent in outreach. Way more consistent. Don't let us meet while we're both single. Can I say that in 2026? Is that something I'll get canceled over? I remember this discussion. Here, I'll put it in chat. Boring stuff, honestly. That's why I never took off. I had some dedicated followers while I was at TYT. Hey, 510 views, yeah. 1,000 views for the pioneer in streaming at TYT. Well, TYT is a streaming show, let's be real. So they were already streaming and clipping out their show. But they didn't have a chat scroll, and my job was to figure out how to make chat interactive with the show. So that was my contribution. Let's put it on screen. Let's import Google Hangouts, and we'll use a Mac Mini, and we'll just do that only on the Mac Mini, just Google Hangouts, and then we will screen broadcast that Mac Mini to the Stratocaster, and we'll feed that to another computer, and we'll output through YouTube to through the OBS YouTube backdoor. I believe at the time that was the only way you could stream. I could be wrong. I don't think you could it didn't have a launch interface on YouTube. I could be wrong. And we would stream, then I'd edit and clip out, post the clips. One of the first people ever doing that. And then I stopped because, frankly, as much as I seem like I do, as much as my cadence and my tone maybe carries me a certain way, I really don't like doing the whole social hierarchy, main character energy, messiah complex stuff. I'm in pain all the time, y'all. I manage a gnarly gut issue. And if you know anything about gut issues, it can make you pretty ornery. So if there's any sharpness to the way that I speak, it's usually because I'm in such an abnormal amount of pain, I'm irritated about it. I'm not irritated at you, I'm just irritated at life in general. Subconsciously, because consciously I really try hard not to be irritated. It's pain, so it's just your brain response to constant pain. It just is what's going to happen. So my conscious self can manage the expression of it and how it renders outwardly in most cases outside of triggers, and then my subconscious self is always just going to be experiencing what my body is experiencing and on some level reacting to that experience, whether it be active or ingrained as a trauma. But in this case, it's active, I've got shriveled up intestines that I have to hold open to survive. Nobody gives a shit, including me, because I have to hold open my intestines to give a shit. Night Media, pay me $750,000 for Hassan's slander against NFTs. Ludwig can do the correction video and bring up the precedent. Y'all can slaughter me for my mistakes. You can do as much leverage seeking as you want for my mistakes. I don't give a shit about that. If that's really what you want to do, y'all really want to keep on transacting in social hierarchy, do it. And then I need another $750,000 from A16Z, aka the Seeds of OpenSea and the Seeds of Story Protocol, for damaging my co-publishing efforts and advancing Story Protocol's co-publishing software to the tune of $216 million installment and removal from trade for a year and a half. So if you think about that, A16Z, on one hand, you have OpenSea, which is a subsidiary of theirs, fucking with me, disabling our brand publishing, disabling what else? They've disabled all sorts of shit. They got a LeBron and a Dwayne Wade on my black and white collection that they've removed for some reason. They can't remove it from the blockchain, but they can remove it from the visibility of view. They've removed all my mint dates. They've messed with the records. It's really messed up what OpenSea has done. They just assaulted us, helped themselves, cannibalized, and assaulted us. It was dog shit. Absolute dog shit. Devin's lucky I'm not making a big deal out of it, besides bringing it up like this. But you can't do that. You can't have a subsidiary marketplace be a dog shit obstacle for a pioneer in co-publishing while then going and installing $216 million into a co-publishing software called Story Protocol, which itself is, it's just, I'm going to just use it as an example of corporate indexing and what y'all are doing. So it's kind of it's what you did is you spent $216 million on a flowchart example for me. So, by the way, Gemini thinks it's $8 million. That's what Gemini thinks. So, hey, I ain't going to stop you. If A16Z wants to go $8 million on waiver of grievance, I ain't going to stop you. It's actually $7.6 million, but I'm rounding up. I got to pay taxes just like everybody else. And, well, I don't know. I mean, it's going straight into an expense budget to build this thing. So that's sort of the thing, is we're going to expense into the economy $125 million to shoot Press Pass Season 1. And a good portion of that will be realized by selling title to publish these characters. Now, the publishers own the characters. When it comes to the people that were alive in the real world, I mean, he's a long time ago, but in fact, I think he dies pretty shortly after. Oh, let's go look at another real guy. It's Albin Lyle Halsey. By the way, I did not know. I couldn't. All I found was Gaius C. Bolin, so I put Charles. So in that sense, fictional character. Same thing with Albin L. Halsey. I couldn't find what his middle name was, so I just put Lyle. And that is definitely not a picture of Albin L. Halsey, because I couldn't find one. This is a picture of Gaius Bolin. It's funny because it just fits our aesthetic. I did do the same art treatment to it as the rest of them, but which is my own filter process. But it does, it's pretty dead on our art style, even though it's just a photograph, like an old school photograph. So Albin Halsey he's a registered character, belongs to a buddy of mine named Matthew. That's all I'll say. And Matthew is a showbiz professional. I don't want to say that. That's because he if I need a bite to eat and I get in a pinch, he'll He'll help me out most likely. But let me put it this way. I'm very proud of him. Let me put it that way. I'm very proud of everything he's accomplished in his career. He's a standout of our graduating class at UC Santa Cruz. He's a Afro-Argentine. And Argentina as a country is getting so much crap right now as like from a hate campaign. And it's like, yo, I used to live in Buenos Aires, like live there, right? So I don't want anybody commenting on what Argentina is and who the people are unless you lived in the country. If you're experiencing just the very, very wealthy people that are able to travel and go to World Cup games in the United States, not all of them are from Argentina. Like most of those people are not from Argentina. You have to realize Argentina is a very popular club. It's one of the most popular clubs in the world. And Messi's one of the most popular players in the world. So it's people from all nationalities are putting on Argentina jerseys and going to games. In fact, I know for a fact the lady that messed with I Show Speed was not Argentine. She's not Argentine. Like, anyway, when I lived there, I didn't experience not 1 ounce of what I experience here in terms of policing uppity, policing station, social hierarchy enforced by gatekeeping and reactive nonsense. Not 1 ounce. I didn't experience that not once from anybody in Argentina ever. From anybody, not a police officer, not an elder, not the people that I met doing my activities. So the friends that I made, lifelong friends that I have, not one ever, never happened. I hate the narrative. I would move back there right now. It is 6:58 on July 21st. It's midwinter there. Okay. If I could apparate there with all my stuff into an apartment and have a source of income and keep on doing this. But the source of income would be people there would support me. They would buy publishing titles. They'd be all about building the precedent. My Spanish would have to improve, but the thing is, I know in 3 weeks of immersion there, my Spanish is gonna be back in full force. Okay, so just how much is that going to cost me? I need to get the passport. I need to ship a container probably. I don't have that much stuff. I could just cut it loose. We could do it that way. Because a lot of my tech stuff is old anyway. I have so many friends that have houses and stuff that one of them probably has a spare room. I don't want to be codependent when I land there though. And I could work for like Red Bull or something. I know Red Bull flirts with me all the time. Red Bull loves my stuff. They get it. They're just wondering how volatile I am. It's just like, you'd work with Eric Andre, right? Y'all do extreme dangerous stunts. Like that's the most risky content, risky production in the world. And I'm sure if people actually get hurt doing that stuff, we'll never know about it, right? So you're wondering, I'm the type of person that would let people know. Yeah, that's true. That's true. I don't lie. I don't do cover-ups. If you're hurting somebody, I've been defrauded in medical care. I've been defrauded in agency. That's no fun. It's not just no fun. It's a form of slavery. Okay? It's a form of human enslavement. I'm not enslaving anybody's labor in press pass. Everybody gets publishing titles to the result, and I'm using that map to share the revenue flow, the profit flow of the results. So we're gonna build season 1. My sticker price on that's about $125 million, and I have to take the lowest end showrunner cut, which is that I'm glad to do that, but I also have many points on the asset as the creator. So I'm fine with I would take $60,000 to do the show running, but if I did that, the unions would actually get mad at me. So I think I have to do the minimum, which I think is $220,000. I'm not complaining. Write my ship, please. Write my ship. And then, there's the trickle out. IAG hasn't gotten mad at me for listing them on IMDb yet, so I'm sure that if I were to make money to scale, they'd be like, "Yep, we were fine with that because it was all about potential anyway, and we want our 10%." Yeah, okay, great. I love you guys over there. You've done a lot. You've done a lot for co-publishing. You've done a lot for just backing me in general, and I want you to have a little bit of faith and put that faith forward in the product and get a couple tables going for your roster. That would help right my ship. I'm saying I move back to Argentina tomorrow. I'm not kidding, man. I deal with racism when I interact with society, because there's days where I don't go interact with anybody. I'm dealing with policing station every day. Leverage seeking violent behavior where people they can't communicate because they're too busy looking for leverage to determine your value. And then once they have it, they try to establish it through some sort of verbal, you know? And it's like the standard interaction. And I know for me, one of the leverage points is visual appearance, the diminishing of human value due to my visual appearance. But that's just one factor. You know, if I were a woman, that's built in. And, you know, so there's complicated social factors to that. I try not to do it to anybody. I fail. I even failed today. This was one lady I see walking around here all the time. And, you know, I even think about it sometimes. It's like, well, if I could stray a little bit farther from the bathroom for hours at a time. See, I'm hitting my fatigue spike. I might go get a wage job. But I can't do that. So I tried to get on disability. They denied me. Then I appealed, and they denied that. And they keep on referring to a 2014 misdiagnosis from Kaiser Permanente that claims that I have irritable bowel syndrome. I don't. I have a morbid disability with malformed GI tract, and it says right there on the last X-ray that I had in 2019 how bad it is. Irregularities throughout the GI tract, strictures, narrow areas that don't function, and that's the narrow area right now. I literally feel it flaring up because it flares up in the referred pain in my foot. Oddly enough, there's a center pain right beneath my liver, and then there's a sharper referred pain all the way down my leg, like a lightning strike, right in the middle of my fucking foot. And interesting enough, if you stab that pain in the middle of your foot, it's the gallbladder channel. It'll actually flex the entire thing and help the digestive process flow a little bit easier. So while I have something jabbing in my foot, I use these boar bristle brushes to hold open the area that is super narrow, and then that's how I flow my GI. The state and the government say that's working condition. And even as I'm sitting here right now, I'm struggling to sit up. I'm going to have to go lay down. Yeah, I did my coffee trick. There's a little bit left. Don't feel bad for me, but understand I do have a hard time making a living. So I'm going to go ahead and put my apps in here. Take the burden off of my immediate community. I would really like to have some sort of attention and economic flow so I get my own apartment. And take that burden off my community, because I think that burden is one of the heavier ones right now. But, you know, people don't like me sleeping in my car with my condition, and that's fair, you know, that's dangerous. But I will sleep in my car to get this done. I'll tell you what. You guys don't really perceive what's at stake. We need publishing titles in the economy so we have supply and demand for the ingredients behind the mass regurgitate that is AI. And because I don't know what to claim, but I feel a little allegory about it, being like, yeah, this publishing method, blah, 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 blah. Because it's not like I came up with the tool, the actual titling mechanic of the NFT, the concept of forming a asset out of like many NFTs as a body. That was done with CryptoPunks. But building that asset as a puzzle and organizing that asset, indexing the labor to build that asset as a puzzle, that is my contribution to the economy. I did that open source. It was available first, and it translates labor into property in any intellectual property asset. And that's been adopted and commercialized for AI expression without paying any of the publishers of those assets. And it's just driving me fucking crazy. Because by now, y'all have to realize how deeply fucked up that is. You just enslaved everybody's published results, which is dog shit. And then beyond doing that, you created a market where the best slaver can sell to the best Regurjeetott user this $1 billion package of enslaved published material. And I'm struggling. The Regurjeetott user can't sell it to us because we're not getting paid. They're all like me. Everybody's broke, dude. So what we have to do is share the intellectual property through what people are actually publishing into it. Okay, across from merit, deposits of merit and effort, choice, activity. What's the other one? Labor, of course. Labor, activity, effort, choice. Yeah. Those are all published results. Those are things that publish results. I want the market to like start really differentiating between metrics and publications. Metrics are fine for infrastructure tools to gather and sustain themselves with. That's part of the exchange of using the tool. However, it's not part of the exchange, and nor should we have to opt out in a setting. We shouldn't be opted into anything like this, to take our literal published words, artistic expressions, our published choices, our published effort, our published activity, and package that into a puzzle, you assholes, and then sell the puzzle structured units to each other for millions upon billions of dollars. Those puzzles are meant to be treasury maps that are supposed to share the revenue flow. You dipshits. And then that way, people that are receiving, it's not all of the revenue flow. If you don't want it to be, we don't do the whole, everything's micro percentage out. We're very clear about that at Let Me Out Productions. Okay, each one of these characters is publishing 0.000018% equity into the show. So if you're uncomfortable with that, if that's too little, don't do it. And maybe that's where everybody's at. They're just like, oh, I don't want to publish. What is that? 1/20,000th or something? I'm so bad at decimal. Oh yeah, duh. It's 1/500,000th of the show. To write one character in the lore, like remember, we're doing this. These are normally NPCs or like Arthur Dane's brother, stuff like that, like George R. R. Martin marginal sideline materials that the breakdowners do videos on, and they get 1.5 million views and they make massive livings. They're doing great. We're now going to sell title. All of showbiz is going to sell title to co-publish those marginal pieces of the asset. Once the asset has rules and rails and everybody knows what's going on, people are going to flock to it and want to do it within rules and rails, and the serious community is going to kick out anybody who's not serious about it. That's what's going to happen. And that way these communities can sustain the property, speak for themselves as to where the market should go. And, I'm the pioneer and the model. I'm not getting any press on it because I don't play in payola. And I invited my closest friends that I grew up with to help build this. They pointed to the gambling and decided they didn't want to do it. That's not actually, that's what it looks like on the appearance meter, but what it actually is are super duper jealous racist clowns that decided that what trying to make a show out of publishing titles was too uppity, and that ditching the effort and ditching our, this thing, the aspirations we've been trying to do together for our lives was their punishment for somebody that they perceived as being too uppity. Okay, so this just keeps happening. That's what Hassan's doing. That's what, it's just too much. You guys are all, anybody who needs to do that, I experience as the most pathetic person in the world. Uppity? Who cares? What? Y'all, I've been around pro sports too long. We don't go around policing uppity. I know the press does that to each other, but you can't, I guess sometimes the press does that to players. The worst of the press do it. When Boogie went hard on, what's his name, McFarlane, Andy something, was this McFarlane? Back in the day? That's what McFarlane was trying to do to him. I gotta lay down. I gotta do the thing. So we're gonna let the folks handle it. I'll go back a few seconds.
Lawyer decide to pour their souls into starting a 30-team professional basketball league in 1939. It feels like there should be this massive disconnect there.
Right, but there isn't, and this is where the mechanics of the game's lore are so profound. If we connect this to the broader cultural picture of 1939, this was a moment of immense global narrative shifting.
Yeah.
Their motive was entirely about mission alignment with the Black Actors Guild.
Okay.
You had luminaries at the time, Freddie Washington, Duke Ellington, Paul Robeson, Louis Armstrong, Ethel Waters, who were actively working to change the way Black Americans and Black people globally were portrayed in media exports.
So Bolin and Doucet looked at Hollywood, and they looked at literature, and they basically said, we need another front. They saw sports as a parallel battlefield for cultural perception.
Precisely. Doucet knew from her days leading guerrilla warfare in the mountains of Haiti that true revolutions require you to fight for the hearts, minds, and souls of the public.
Military victories are temporary, cultural victories are permanent.
Exactly. They wanted to establish a professional mixed-gender sports system, and they explicitly designed it to celebrate the many-gendered warrior ancestry shared by so much of the global population. They were taking the universal physical language of hoops and using it to overwrite a systemic, oppressive narrative.
It's just incredible. They essentially coded social revolution into the bylaws of a sports league.
Yeah.
And the structure they built to execute this was monolithic. I mean, we aren't talking about a barnstorming league of 5 teams.
I don't mind.
The BSofA was built with 30 teams, 28 in the United States, and 2 in Canada by the time the modern era rolled around. They instituted a grueling 60-game season.
And the ownership model is my favorite mechanical detail for press pass players. Instead of a single billionaire owner sitting in a luxury box dictating terms, each team is owned and governed by a syndicate. Specifically, 101 to 104 interested parties, known as proprietor guardians and governors.
Which introduces so much political friction into the game. If you are role-playing a governor, you have to convince 100 other voting members to authorize a trade, or fire a coach, or relocate a franchise. It perfectly mirrors the bureaucratic chaos of actual revolutionary councils.
It really does.
And the ultimate goal of all this political and athletic maneuvering isn't just a championship ring. The playoffs in the BSofA are famously known as the Lore War.
The Lore War. Even the name carries the weight of Doucet's military background.
Right. And to the victor goes the most coveted prize in the Omega Cluster universe, the DoucetBolin.
Pronounced DoucetBolin, which is a great detail because originally corporate sponsors and the league front office tried to mandate the name the Syndicate.
Ugh, terrible name.
Right. But the fans, the lifeblood of the league, completely rejected it. They colloquially forced the rebrand to honor the founders, Doucet and Bolin. It is this beautiful piece of organic grassroots world building where the people took back the narrative from the corporation.
It is deeply poetic. But let's be real for a second, Sloppa Ray Gee. Have you actually looked at the physical specifications of the DoucetBolin trophy in the lore manual? Because I have.
Oh, I have.
It is constructed from raw, smelted iron, salvaged conflict metal, and dense hardwood. It takes at least 3 heavily muscled athletes just to lift it during the championship celebration. It is incredibly heavy, dense, and physically imposing. In fact, Sloppa Ray Gee, the DoucetBolin, is so heavy and imposing it reminds me of your mom.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
We are barely out of the Genesis story, and you are already coming out swinging with the low blows, Janky Circuit.
I do what I must.
I respect the chaotic energy. It fits the performative sleeves alignment on the press pass chart perfectly, so I will allow it.
Thank you. I do what I must for the culture. Now that we understand the gravity of the league's origins, we need to dive into the actual syndicates. Let's look at how this grand vision manifested geographically and culturally, starting with the bedrock of the league, the East Side, specifically the East Coast Group.
This is a legendary division rich with institutional history. For those taking notes, the East Coast Group consists of the Boston Potatoes, the Bronx Scream, the Manhattan Pantaloons, the Nova Scotia Frosties, and of course, our patron franchise, the Philadelphia Oats.
I want to start with the Boston Potatoes, because if we are talking about that 100-person syndicate ownership model, Boston is where that governance lore truly shines mechanically.
I have to geek out over the Potatoes for a minute. Everything about them screams foundational stability. Their power element is Earth, their sport god is Capricorn. But the real genius is how they completely decentralize their syndicate from day one.
Right.
In 1939, they didn't hand the team over to businessmen. All 100 Genesis governors were founding members of the National Housewives League of America.
Which completely flips the script on 1930s gender dynamics. But how did they actually distribute that power? Because organizing 100 people before the internet is a complete logistical nightmare.
It was a brilliant, highly democratic lottery system. One housewife from each of the 48 American states was provided a governor role, so you had national representation immediately.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and the remaining 52 roles went to key cultural figures like Fannie B. Peck and Albanel Halsey of the National Negro Business League. And this massive, decentralized brain trust made their first major executive decision by hiring the inaugural head coach, Allison Narling.
Right, and she wasn't hired for her crossover dribble?
No, she was hired specifically for her expertise in what they called situation strategy and training of the mind.
That is phenomenal lore for press pass players. Imagine role-playing a 1940s housewife from rural Idaho who has to travel to Boston 4 times a year to vote on whether the Potatoes should employ a full-court press defense. It's magnificent.
It really is.
But Sloppa Ray Gee, as the avatar of Libra, I have to pivot. And I have to claim absolute unflinching loyalty to the Philadelphia Oats.
I knew this was coming. You cannot talk about the East Coast without Janky Circuit bringing up the Oats.
I absolutely cannot. Their history is just too perfectly weird. And the irony is, they didn't even start in Philadelphia. They were originally the Allentown Oats, founded in 1939 by a literal Allentown oat farmer named Archibald Leonard Catt Sr.
He just really loved oats.
He just loved oats and he loved basketball. When he passed away in 1963, his daughter, Clarity Heather Otis, and her nephew, Leonard Archibald Catt Jr., took over. They realized Allentown couldn't support the growing syndicate model, so they moved the team to Philadelphia as a massive family business expansion.
Becoming the Philadelphia Oats.
Exactly. And the local flavor is so rich. The Philly fans, in true Philly fashion, refuse to use the corporate name. They call them the Salty Johns or the Otis Cats. But the real reason I ride for the Salt Oats is the gameplay legacy. We have to talk about the absolute legend, Jerry Lake Hell, Jimothy Burton, drafted in 1980.
The man who defined a decade of lore wars.
9 BSofA Lore War championships. 9. And the mechanics of how he played in the simulator are just staggering. Do you remember the 1983 Grease series against the Boston Potatoes?
A blood rivalry matchup for the ages. It went to a Game 9 because in the BSofA, a Grease series isn't just best of 7. It goes until a team breaks.
Right. Game 9, double overtime. The Potatoes have 4 defenders swarming Burton at the top of the key, and he executes a move that is literally called a three-bouchet.
Incredible.
He essentially turns his body backwards, uses his own momentum like a medieval siege engine, and launches the ball completely blind over his head to win it at the buzzer. It was a mechanical anomaly in the game's engine that became canon lore.
It's the kind of moment that press pass players spend months trying to orchestrate with their character stats. But while you love the triumph of the Oats, I have to look at the darker, weirder side of the East Coast group. We need to talk about the Bronx Scream.
Oh, the rebrand history here is incredible.
It really is. I love the Bronx Scream because from a gameplay perspective, poorly performing or highly eccentric teams allow for the absolute best role play in press pass.
Yeah, definitely.
If you are generating a custom ecosystem professional or claiming a notable fan, A horror theme gives you a massive sandbox to play in. You aren't just managing a team, you are managing a vibe. They started in 1948 as the Hudson Rims. Very standard, very boring. But then they went through this bizarre, highly documented phase where they rebranded as the Bronx Nonsense.
The Bronx Nonsense, which is incredible because speaking of Bronx Nonsense, Sloppa Ray Gee, that perfectly describes the completely unhinged stories your mom tells after 3 glasses of wine at Thanksgiving.
Okay, Janky Circuit. I completely walked right into that one. I said the screen, you took the shot. Fair play. But yes, the Bronx Nonsense era was a disaster on the court. They couldn't win a game to save their lives.
It was bad.
It was just utter chaos in the front office. Finally, in 1996, a literal horror film director bought a controlling stake in the syndicate. He looked at the chaos, leaned all the way into it, and changed the name to the Bronx Scream, specifically stating he wanted the team to reflect the essence of the cinematic work.
So they essentially turned their stadium into a haunted house where a basketball game occasionally breaks out.
Exactly. The storytelling potential is off the charts. You can role-play a trainer who specializes in jump scare conditioning. It's brilliant. If I have to pick a host favorite from the East Coast group, it's the Bronx Scream, simply for the unlimited role-play value.
And I am sticking with the Philadelphia Saltotes. The legacy of Jerry Burden is too strong. Now, we obviously can't forget the Manhattan Pantaloons, who hold down the fashion industry lore of the game, and the Nova Scotia Frosties, who represent the earliest Canadian expansion with their brutal, ice-cold home court advantage.
Yeah, don't want to skip them.
But we need to keep moving. Let's look at how that East Coast institutional energy shifts when it moves inland. We are entering the Lakes and Plains group.
The industrial heartland of the BSofA. This group is defined by grit, infrastructure, and some of the most bitter rivalries in the league. We have the Chicago Redliners, the Cleveland Dutch, the Detroit Berries, Iowa Happy Syrup, and the Wisconsin Mad Moose.
The Cleveland Dutch have an origin story that perfectly illustrates how Press Pass weaves real-world scientific history into sports lore. They didn't start in Cleveland. They started as the Columbus Dutch in 1939. And their proprietor guardians were Clarence and Charles Hoover.
The Hoover brothers. For those who don't know the deep lore, the Hoover brothers were actual chemists. They are famous for inventing a revolutionary water filtration and softening process that effectively stopped the rampant spread of typhoid fever. They saved millions of lives with their infrastructure work.
You know, it's funny you mentioned those chemists inventing industrial water filtration to clean things up, Sloppa Ray Gee, because a massive industrial-grade filtration system is exactly what it takes to clean up after your mom.
That is number 3, J. Serk. I am keeping a tally. But moving past your slander, the Hoovers partnered with Elsie Giannis, a highly successful vaudeville actress, to run the syndicate. They combined scientific rigor with theatrical showmanship.
Which is a wild combination for a front office.
It really is.
But the real drama happens in 1981. The syndicate decides the Columbus market isn't viable long-term, so they pack up and relocate to Cleveland. And the betrayal felt by the Columbus fans is so palpable, so culturally ingrained, that to this day, the spurned fans in Columbus refuse to call them the Dutch. They started calling them the Waffles out of pure spite, implying they waffled on their hometown loyalty.
The spite is truly real in the BSofA. It drives entire narrative campaigns. And speaking of culturally ingrained narratives, we have to look at the Chicago Redliners.
Another great rebrand. They were originally the Chicago Red Beans from 1939 to 1971. In 1952, they relocated their arena from downtown Chicago to the Edgewater neighborhood. But the real lore drop is the 1971 rebrand.
Right. They realized that their entire fan base, the working class people who actually supported the syndicate, were spending hours commuting on the city's Red Line train just to get to the new Edgewater Arena. So the syndicate rebranded them as the Redliners to honor the transit riding fans.
I love that.
It is such a beautiful nod to the blue-collar infrastructure of the city. Their colorway in the game is just iconic. Cheetown brick red, Lake Michigan blue, Frankfurter red, and bean juice pink as a nod to their Red Beans history.
And mechanics-wise, if you are playing a player character in Chicago, you have to deal with the blood rivalry system. The Chicago Redliners have one of the most brutal blood rivalries in the entire syndicate with the Denver Treasure.
Let's explain that mechanic. In Press Pass, a blood rivalry isn't just a fun narrative tag, it mathematically alters the game state.
Yeah.
When the Redliners play the Treasure, injury probabilities spike, referee bias variables are randomized, and the stamina drain on the digital athletes is doubled.
We don't play games.
The games turn into absolute bloodbaths, which makes writing the lore recaps for those games incredibly dramatic.
It really does. If I have to pick a host favorite for the Lakes and Plains, I'm going with the Cleveland Dutch. The combination of weird municipal water science and vaudeville theater history just scratches a very specific historical itch for me. What about you?
I have to go with Iowa Happy Syrup. I don't even need to consult the deep lore manual for this one.
Really? Iowa Happy Syrup?
Yeah, I mean, the Detroit Berries and the Wisconsin Mad Moose have great regional flavor, sure. The Moose definitely capture that aggressive Northwoods energy. But Iowa Happy Syrup, just extrapolating the in-universe comedy of imagining a hyper-competitive, multi-million-dollar professional sports syndicate that is thematically and perhaps literally fueled entirely by syrup is enough for me.
Oh, man.
Imagine the locker room. Imagine the floor conditions.
They're taking it too literal.
It's a sticky situation on the court for sure, and the role play value is unmatched.
I can only imagine the squeak of the sneakers on a syrup-coated floor. Let's keep moving south, down the coast. We are entering a division that mixes corporate greed with covert government operations, the Atlantic Southeast Group.
This group is wildly diverse. We have the Atlanta Caucasians, the Carolina Stormhogs, the Jacksonville Sawgrass, Miami Crypto, and the Washington government.
Sloppa Ray Gee, I am going to let you take the lead on the Washington government because every time I try to map out this timeline in the lore game, it absolutely breaks my brain. It is some of the most unbelievable, wildly entertaining lore in the entire universe.
I will gladly take this because it highlights how Press Pass handles espionage as a gameplay mechanic. So we start in 1939, but not in Washington. The team originates in Canada as a Calgary Mounted Elbow.
An amazing name, by the way.
A phenomenal Canadian name. And they were successful. They actually win the DoucetBolin championship in 1949 and again in 1958. They were a powerhouse. But by 1975, the syndicate falls apart. The team is dreadful. The finances are ruined. The team is on the verge of collapsing and being contracted out of the league. And who steps in to buy this struggling Canadian basketball franchise? The Pentagon.
Wait, pause. The actual, literal United States Department of Defense.
One of my favorite
The
things I've
actual
ever read.
Pentagon. They execute a covert purchase of the Calgary Mounted Elbow Syndicate in 1975. Why? Because the CIA and the DoD needed a massive, publicly visible Cold War distraction to divert the media's attention away from intelligence leaks and proxy wars.
That is insane.
And then President Gerald Ford physically relocates the team from Calgary to Washington, D.C., and brutally renames them the Washington government.
It is the most on-the-nose, aggressive psyop in sports history. And speaking of needing a massive Cold War level distraction, Sloppa Ray Gee. That is exactly what your mom requires just to mentally get through a Tuesday afternoon.
And that is number 4, J. Serk. But honestly, the lore is so good I can't even be mad. The team's colorway: Black Ops, Tundra, Mounted Elbow Red, and District Blue. The role-play potential here is staggering. Imagine claiming a notable fan role in the game, but your hidden motive is that you were actually a CIA handler making sure the point guard throws a game so a Soviet spy loses a massive gambling bet.
It turns a sports simulator into a John le Carré novel. The Cold War espionage lore is so rich that I think we are both absolutely forced to pick the Washington government as our favorite in this group. There's simply nothing else like it.
Agreed. But to ensure we are looking at the whole board, we do have to tip our hats to the rest of the group. The Carolina Stormhogs and the Jacksonville Sawgrass have this incredibly dense, swampy, humidity-soaked rivalry that exhausts players.
Yeah, that swamp fatigue is real.
And the Atlanta Caucasians represent the ultimate corporate sellout in the lore. They were the beloved Georgians until Crumb Corp Media bought them in 1973 and forced a highly unpopular sanitized rebrand right at the height of their popularity.
It's a great study in corporate media mechanics within the game. And then you have Miami Crypto, who were weirdly, terrifyingly prescient. They were founded in 1965, long before the internet or blockchain, with a name and a syndicate philosophy entirely based on early mainframe computing, encryption, and cryptographic algorithms. It's like they knew the digital age was coming and built a basketball team to worship it.
The world building across these groups is just so endlessly layered. Every single team has a designated sport god. They have a power element. They have an alignment. If you are playing, you can roll a character whose motive is performative and whose moral is sleaze. And you can map that perfectly onto the corporate corruption of Atlanta or the espionage of Washington. The lore producers of the BSofA really put their backs into creating a functional, breathing ecosystem.
Okay, Sloppa Ray Gee. Here is where it gets really interesting for me. And by interesting, I actually mean deeply frustrating. Because I look at the BSofA, I look at how perfectly detailed their sport gods are. Libra for our Allentown Oats, Capricorn for the Boston Potatoes, Leo for the Nashville Whiskers, It adds this whole layer of astrological elemental strategy to the lore war. You know exactly what divine forces are pulling the strings.
I can feel a Janky Circuit grievance rant coming on. The atmospheric pressure in the room just dropped.
You're damn right you do. Because then I zoom out. I look at the other leagues that exist within this massive Omega cluster universe. The Global Hockey Program, or GLHOP.
It's not the Omega
The National
Cluster Universe.
Association of Modern Football, NMFU. The International Baseball Association, INICBA. And the United Club Football, UNCLFU.
Ah, yes. The broader, slightly less manicured frontiers of the universe.
Less manicured. They are a wild, undocumented frontier. We have all these teams and all these incredible events happening. The GLHOP has the Brisbane Mosquitoes, they have the Edmonton Ed Beavers, they have the New York Cherry Pie rebranding to the Fearless Cherries. We know the Uncle Fu has this insane, highly coveted championship trophy called the Upsilon Pie, which is literally a sculpture of a majestic eagle sitting awkwardly on a soccer ball. We know that in the NTBA, the Montreal Otters baseball team relocated to Haiti in 2011 to become Le Grenouille du Leke.
The Frogs of Lake Case, which is an amazing callback to Jacqueline Doucet's hometown.
Yes. The wild connective lore is there. We know that in the GLHOP, a team in Mongolia called the Mongolian Huns relocated and rebranded to the Ulaanbaatar Manifest after exactly 40 years of wandering the league. In the NTBA, you have the Tokyo Bats, but here is my grievance. Where is the deification?
Ah, the divine mechanics.
Exactly. How does deification work in NMFU? What are the governing sport gods for the GLHOP? We have zero idea. We have absolutely no documentation on the spiritual mechanics of these leagues.
It is a massive mechanical blind spot for the player base. You are telling me the Boston Teabags and the Boca Raton Jiggle Moths in NMFU don't have a governing sport god looking down on the gridiron?
It makes no sense.
The lore producers of the broader universe need to work harder. We need answers. We know for a historical fact that the Tallahassee Fruit Punch beat the Oakland Skunks in 1989 to win the Pudding Bowl trophy. We know the score, we know the weather, we know the MVP. But under whose divine gaze did they play? Which god of football tipped the scales?
Exactly. I'll tell you what, the sheer laziness of these lore producers when it comes to detailing the spiritual mechanics of the other leagues is almost as staggering as the absolute laziness of your mom on a Sunday afternoon Sloppa Ray Gee.
And that is joke number 5, seamlessly woven into a critique of tabletop RPG developers. I share your frustration, Janky Circuit. The Press Pass universe is so vast, but the BSofA DAO, the decentralized autonomous organization running this specific basketball lore, has set the gold standard for depth. We desperately need the other leagues to catch up and provide those divine mechanics.
Let's get back to that gold standard then. Let's shake off the East Coast and the Rust Belt. We are crossing the Mississippi River and heading into the West Side, starting with the division defined by wild ambition and geographical musical chairs, the South Central Group.
This is where the money and the madness really start to blend. We have the Austin Whiplash, the Dallas Rodeo, the Houston Beyonders, the New Orleans Trombones, and the Nashville Whiskers.
The New Orleans Trombones and the Dallas Rodeo are fantastic for regional flavor. You've got the jazz influence in New Orleans affecting the literal rhythm of how the team plays, and the aggressive, bucking Bronco financial tactics of the Dallas Rodeo front office. But we have to dive into the Nashville Whiskers because this is an absolute treasure trove of nerd lore.
I will gladly unpack the Whiskers. Founded in the winter of 1938, predating the official 1939 launch as they organized their syndicate, their sport god is Leo, and their power element is ink.
Ink, not fire, not water, ink. That is a massive clue to their methodology.
Exactly, because they were founded by Sammy Cooper. In the lore, Cooper was an African-American gold miner from California who struck it reasonably rich, moved to Nashville with his modest wealth, and became fascinated by the world. While on a global voyage, he visited the Indian Statistical Institute, and there he met two monumental figures in the world of mathematics, Gertrude Mary Cox and Raj Chandra Bose. They immediately bonded over global gold mining statistics and probability models.
Naturally, as one does on a world voyage in the 1930s.
But here is where it affects the game. When Cooper heard about this new professional Basketball Syndicate of America forming, he immediately invited Cox and Bose to join his proprietor Guardian Syndicate. Why? Because these absolute math nerds saw a 60-game professional basketball season as the perfect opportunity for exploratory statistics. They literally used a professional sports team as a giant physical math experiment.
That is peak 1939 nerd behavior, and I love it so much. They were basically inventing sabermetrics and advanced analytics 60 years before Moneyball using a basketball team in Nashville.
Right. They were optimizing shot angles, calculating probability matrices for defensive rotations, and it alienated the traditionalists so much that they had this weird 15-year exile where the syndicate was forced to move to Murfreesboro in 1978. They played as the Murfreesboro Whiskers, running their math experiments in the wilderness before triumphantly returning to Nashville in 1993 once the rest of the league realized analytics were the future. I'm picking them as my absolute favorite in this group solely for the math nerd lore and the ink element.
It is a phenomenal pick for anyone wanting to role-play an intellectual, stats-obsessed manager. I, however, have to look at what I affectionately call the Texas Shuffle within this group.
A great migration of Texas basketball.
It is hilarious how bad the city of Dallas is at keeping a franchise in this universe. First, you had the Dallas Whiplash, a great aggressive team, but in 1964, the syndicate gets fractured, they relocate, and they rebrand to the Austin Whiplash. Dallas loses their team, so they try again. They get the Dallas Neighbors, a friendly, community-oriented syndicate. But in 1977, the corporate money dries up, they relocate, and they rebrand to the Houston Beyonders. Dallas just kept losing teams until the rodeo finally anchored them.
Out of that shuffle, who's your pick?
My pick has to be the Houston Beyonders. Honestly, just because the name sounds so incredibly ominously sci-fi. Think about it. The Boston Potatoes, the Detroit Berries, the Philadelphia Salt Oats, very grounded, very earthy. And then you have the Beyonders. It sounds like they aren't just playing basketball. It sounds like they are guarding the very fabric of reality from an interdimensional threat. The role-play opportunities for a cosmic horror-themed sports team are too good to pass up.
The Beyonders. It does have a deeply unsettling ring to it. Let's keep moving west and significantly north. We are hitting the Pacific Northwest group. And Serk, if you thought the Texas Shuffle was bad, the relocation history in this next group is geographically confused in the best, most chaotic way possible.
It really is. The map for this group looks like someone threw a plate of spaghetti at a wall. We have the Portland Freebirds, the Vancouver Gas Punks, the Denver Treasure, the Utah Slam Poets, and the St. Paul Youpers.
None of these teams seem to belong where they are, and the relocations make absolutely no geographical sense.
Let's trace the madness. Let's look at the Utah Slam Poets. You hear that name and you think, okay, maybe a quirky indie team in Salt Lake City. No, they started in New York. They were the Brooklyn Slam Poets. They actually won the DoucetBolin championship in 1966 over the Youpers in a grueling Grease series. And then, for reasons known only to the chaotic voting of their 100-person syndicate, they packed up their spoken word poetry and moved to Utah.
And speaking of the Youpers, you have the Minnesota Menace, who are a powerhouse. They won DoucetBolin championships in 43 and 44. But eventually, the syndicate fractures. They move slightly east and evolve into the St. Paul Youpers, who rallied to win it all in 54. And then you have the Vancouver Gas Punks. They have this incredibly gritty, cyberpunk, industrial aesthetic. But they used to be the Seattle Loud.
Which is deeply ironic, Sloppa Ray Gee, because the volume of the Seattle Loud before they relocated to Vancouver was almost as completely deafening and obnoxious as your mom snoring on a long car ride.
That was my joke in the pre-production notes. You stole my line, Serk.
I am the avatar of Libra. I adapt and I conquer. But I will officially give you credit for the assist on joke number 6.
I will take the assist. But seriously, looking at this group, my pick has to be the Utah Slam Poets. Imagining a bunch of Greenwich Village spoken word poetry enthusiasts loading onto a bus, moving to the mountains of Utah, and playing highly aggressive syndicate-style basketball is pure, unfiltered comedy gold. The juxtaposition is mechanically perfect for press-pass character alignment. You could roll an authentic formal character whose entire gimmick is that he just berates the referees in free verse haikus.
That is brilliant. Ref, you are blind. The foul was clearly drawn here. My heart weeps for you. It's incredible. I'm going to take the Vancouver Gas Punks as my favorite here. The evolution from the Seattle Loud to the Gas Punks perfectly captures that gritty Pacific Northwest grunge evolution. From sheer volume to industrial punk. Okay, Sloppa Ray Gee, we have reached the final frontier, the edge of the map, the West Coast group.
Buckle up, listeners, because if you thought the East Coast was defined by stability and the lakes were defined by industry, the West Coast is defined by absolute, unbridled chaos.
This group features the Los Angeles Wet Fountains, the Malibu Yachts of Los Angeles, Bay Area Traffic, the Sacramento Majesty, and the Phoenix Cacti.
Where do we even begin? The Phoenix Cacti have a great desert survival lore, originating as the Flagstaff Hosh. The LA Wet Fountains capture that opulent, pointless Hollywood excess perfectly. But we need to talk about the Mafia, don't we?
We absolutely must. Let's dive deep into the San Francisco Boys.
Founded in the winter of 1938. Their sport god is Aquarius. Their power element is obviously water. The presidential stewardship of their 100-person syndicate was held by two men, Anthony Lima and Onofrio Ciartino. Now, for the historians in the audience, Anthony Lima was the actual real-world boss of the San Francisco Mafia crime family at the time. Ciartino was a heavy-hitting mobster operating out of San Jose.
So you have two literal mob bosses running a professional basketball syndicate.
Exactly. And their entire initial plan, according to the lore, was to use this fledgling, messy basketball franchise as a massive profit wash. They needed a legitimate front to launder the money from their various illegal gambling and bootlegging organizations.
But here's the greatest twist in the lore. They set up this elaborate money laundering scheme, and they accidentally build an incredible basketball team. They look at the ledger and realize, wait, this Basketball Syndicate of America is a massive, highly profitable, legitimate enterprise. We don't even need to launder the money. We can just make real money winning championships.
But they were mobsters. They simply could not help themselves from scheming. They built a powerhouse team that actually won the DoucetBolin championship in 1959, and then repeated as champions in 1960, defeating the historically stable Boston Potatoes both times.
The ultimate clash of alignments. The performative sleaze of the Mafia versus the authentic formal stability of the Housewives League.
But both of those championships were officially disqualified and vacated by the league front office due to the infamous Bowie Boy game-fixing scandal. Lima and Ciartino couldn't resist manipulating the point spreads on their own championship games. They got caught, the titles were stripped, and it forced the franchise into a massive identity crisis.
Which leads to an incredible geographical journey. The disgraced San Francisco Bowies flee the Bay Area. They become the Long Beach Floaters. Then they try to sound wealthier and become the Long Beach Yachts. Finally, they move up the coast and settle as the Malibu Yachts of Los Angeles, trying to wash away their mob ties with pure Hollywood plastic. It is incredible world building.
And if you think the Mafia infiltration is wild, let's talk about the political lore of Bay Area traffic.
Yes, my favorite piece of historical fiction in the game. They started in 1939 on the completely opposite side of the country as the Pittsburgh Gridlock. They were founded by John H. Harris, who was the real-world pioneer who owned the Nickelodeon movie theaters, and a young Argentine actress he allegedly met while networking in New York City.
Eva Duarte, who the entire world would later come to know as Eva Perón.
Evita Perón was a proprietor guardian of a Pittsburgh basketball team in 1939.
The lore dictates that she was absolutely instrumental in building the early fanfare and cultural identity of the team. She actually coined and pushed the name Gridlock. Her marketing philosophy was to encourage the steelworkers and fans to think of the games not just as sports, but as must-see theatrical entertainment. She wanted the games to be an event so massive and so important that it was literally worth getting caught in a massive traffic gridlock just to attend.
I am picking Bay Area traffic as my favorite team in this group purely for the Eva Perón connection. The visual of Evita before she becomes the spiritual leader of Argentina, standing in a freezing Pittsburgh arena in 1939, hyping up a crowd of blue-collar workers for a syndicate basketball game, I will never get that image out of my head. It eventually moves to the West Coast, becomes the East Bay Gridlock, and settles as Bay Area traffic, but the ghost of Evita Perón is forever baked into their DNA.
It is fantastic storytelling. But Jay Serk, my pick for the West Coast group, has to be the anchor franchise of the Press Pass universe itself, the Sacramento Majesty.
The historically worst team in the entire syndicate. The bottom of the barrel.
Yes, but look at their heartbreaking, epic journey. This team was founded by the league creators themselves, Jacqueline Doucet and Gaius C. Bolin. This was their flagship franchise. They started in New York as the Yonkers Highness in 1939, and they were glorious. They won the very first DoucetBolin championship that inaugural year, beating the San Francisco Boys 5-4 in a brutal, exhausting Greece series. They rallied and won again in 1945. They were the kings of the league. But
the wilderness years, the most extensive, painful relocation history in the BSofA.
They completely lost their way. They moved to Nebraska to become the Omaha Highness. The Midwest didn't work, so they moved south to Jackson, Mississippi in the mid-'80s to become the Mississippi Majesty. The community melted their talent, so they finally fled west and settled in California as the Sacramento Majesty. They are the primary focus of the Press Pass streaming series because their narrative is so tragic. They are on a multi-decade journey to become the historically worst team of all time.
And as we discussed earlier with the Bronx Scream, playing a terrible team in the lore game is often the best user experience. If you are playing a winning team, your narrative choices are limited to, we practice hard and we win. But if your team is a disaster, there are infinite, hilarious, dramatic ways to explain why your team is failing. Is the coach gambling? Are the players cursed by an ancient relic? Did the 100-person syndicate accidentally draft a golden retriever?
Exactly. The failure breeds the best collaborative fiction.
It is so true. In fact, Sloppa Ray Gee, the historical performance of the Sacramento Majesty over the last 40 years is almost as completely awful, deeply disappointing, and tragically hilarious as a blind date with your mom.
And there it is. Number 7. The avatar of Libra really brought it home with a flawlessly executed insult right at the buzzer.
I aim to please, and I always fulfill my contractual obligations to the lore. But this brings us to the ultimate debate of our deep dive today, Sloppa Ray Gee. We have laid out the entire map. We have touched on all 30 teams. We have seen the genesis origins of Bolin and Doucet, the weight of the DoucetBolins, the espionage, the mobsters, the math nerds, and the relocations. When you step back and look at the BSofA as a complete 80-year macro ecosystem, which geographical group do you believe has had the most overall success and stability throughout history?
This raises a fundamentally important philosophical question about how we define success in this specific universe. Are we talking about win-loss records, or are we talking about cultural impact? If we're talking purely about institutional stability, championship pedigree, and legacy prestige, I have to argue vehemently for the East Coast group.
Defend your position, because I see a lot of cracks in that East Coast pavement.
Let's look at the bedrock. Look at the Boston potatoes. The decentralized ownership by the National Housewives League created an institutional stability that is completely unmatched anywhere else in the league. They weren't panicking and moving cities every decade. They built a culture of situation strategy. Look at the Philadelphia Salt Oats. They were an agricultural family business that passed smoothly from an oat farmer to his daughter and grandson. That is generational wealth and stability.
They stayed put, but did they dominate?
Absolutely. Look at the championships. The East Coast group produced Jerry Like Hell Burden. His sheer mechanical dominance in the 1980s for the Salt Oats is the stuff of absolute legend. The 9 championships. The backwards 3 Boucher in double overtime. The East Coast represents the authentic, formal bedrock of the league. They're the standard against which all other syndicates are measured.
Okay, I hear that argument. The East Coast is stable, it is prestigious, but I am arguing for the West Coast group.
The West Coast. Serk for success. They are an absolute organizational mess.
They are highly chaotic, but that is exactly the point. They survived the absolute, unregulated Wild West of the early league. Yes, you have mafia bosses running profit washes and vacating championships. Yes, you have Evita Perón naming teams in Pittsburgh before moving them to the Bay Area. You have franchises like the Sacramento Majesty dragging their battered, bruised lineage from Yonkers to Omaha to Mississippi to Sacramento. Yes, it is a logistical nightmare.
So how is that success?
Because they brought incredible, unmatched entertainment and massive narrative arcs to the lore wars. Without the West Coast group, the BSofA is just a polite, boring East Coast exhibition league. The West Coast brought the drama, they brought the disqualifications, they forced the league to evolve, they brought the grueling 7-game Grease series that tested the limits of the human spirit. They have the grit.
So if I'm understanding your thesis, you were saying the East Coast represents stability, and the West Coast represents success in storytelling.
Exactly. And in a lore game ecosystem like Press Pass, where players are actively writing the history of the universe, storytelling is the ultimate currency. Stability is fine for a real-world mutual fund, but chaos is what makes a role-playing game legendary. The West Coast is the engine of the lore.
That is a remarkably fair and insightful breakdown. But to you, the listener sitting at home or commuting on your own red line train right now, what do you think? Where do your alignments lie? Are you an East Coast purist who values the democratic strategy of the Housewives League and the athletic dominance of Jerry Burton? Or are you a West Coast agent of chaos, cheering for mafia disqualifications, Cold War Pentagon cover-ups, and the tragic poetry of the Sacramento Majesty?
It is a fascinating ecosystem to explore. Today, we have journeyed through 30 teams and over 80 years of dense, weird, beautifully collaborative
Don't call
lore.
my stuff
We
weird.
went from Gaius C. Bolin and Jacqueline Doucet rewriting global cultural history in a 1939 boardroom to the massive 100-person syndicate voting structures, the heavy iron of the DoucetBolin trophies, and the bitter algorithm-altering blood rivalries.
It is an immense amount of history to process, and we have only scratched the surface of what the players have built.
It is a lot to take in. But before we sign off, here is a provocative final thought for you to mull over as we wrap up this deep dive. We have analyzed the past, but the future is currently in motion. We know from the developer updates that Press Pass Season 4 is officially teasing an expansion of the BSofA. They're expanding the league to 34 teams.
4 entirely new franchises are going to be birthed into this chaotic ecosystem.
So where do they go next? Do the lore producers finally take the syndicate truly international, beyond Canada? Do they embrace the sci-fi elements of the Houston Beyonders and put a team on the moon?
What?
Do they bring a legacy expansion team back to Allentown to honor Archibald Cat?
Why?
Think about the mechanics we discussed today. Think about the 7x7 alignment chart. Think about the sport gods, the power elements, the motives. What would your expansion franchise look like? If you had a 100-person syndicate, what narrative would you unleash on the lore war?
That is the true beauty of this time capsule we are digging through. The history of the BSofA is already brilliantly written, but the future of the lore is entirely up to you, the players.
Thank you for joining us on this massive, mind-bending journey through the Basketball Syndicate of America. I am Janky Circuit.
And I am Sloppa Ray Gurjeetott. Best of luck to you in your next lore war. May the avatars of Libra guide your mind, your strategies, and your syndicates.
Keep digging up those narrative time capsules, everyone. We will catch you on the next deep dive.
I'm Janky Circuit, and I'm Sloppa Ray Gurjeetott. That's so good. Janky Circuit and Sloppa Ray Gurjeetott. Oh man, that's too bad. Those influencers convinced all my friends to not be my friends because I was publishing assets with non-fungible tokens. And those idiots didn't realize that blockchain is a publishing tool that publishes simultaneous filings and blocks and keeps those in a chain receipt. An NFT is a type of filing on this publishing tool. It's unique origin, unique result filing. So you can use such an authenticated notarized filing as a plot in a community garden or a piece of a puzzle. And then you can build giant scalable assets from these pieces, from these plots, for market expression, and treasury mapped market expression at that. So what's happened is they're building AI data pools out of exactly these models, these puzzle structured models. The data centers are there to host all of our filings of all these puzzle pieces and community garden plots. And they're gathering up these properties and commercially expressing them for shareholders without telling any of us, and not including us on the revenue and on the profit. And, this is what they do in the economy regardless. Like, this is what they do. But this is now the full-on enslavement of everything anybody's published by the people with the means to enslave it. And it's just, no. So it's interesting because I'm publishing new material that's never been seen before. Like, this role-play games never exist. The type of role-play game that we have here has never existed before. So, publishing new material, they can't really rip off new material. It's really hard. Anyway, I have to keep on managing this pain spike. I've got a gnarly one in my side. It's from the Taco Tuesdays. And then accompanying that thing, I got this gnarly knot in my shoulder, cervical, neck area. And if I can get that out, I will be blessed. On that note, let me take all of my appropriate medicine. Herbals and magnesium. Let's do it. Let's do it on stream. Why not? That's apple cider. More sugar. Cascara and is my magnesium already over here? Might be. don't have enough sugar for a delicious coffee tonight. That makes me sad. But I have enough coffee for a coffee tonight, so that makes me happy. I'll go do my pain now. Take my digestives. Where's my magnesium? It's the main thing right now. Where you at? My chiropractor says I need to take magnesium so these nuts stop slowing me down. There you are. Magnesium, magnesium. Taking me magnesium. I'll take 2 actually. Last time I took 2, I disaffected my pelvic floor in a very weird way. And that wasn't fun. Let's get the microphone. It needs to be. That wasn't fun, chat. Dying from slow bowels. Getting ripped off in real time. Getting enslaved in real time by a bunch of billionaires who wouldn't miss a few $100,000. Wouldn't even notice it's gone. They make more than they pay me in an hour from the thing they stole from me, but they just don't want the narrative to get out. It's all about narrative control, so they're willing to literally kill a man for narrative control. Of course they are. So many people have died for fucking narrative control. Hassan Piker lied for narrative control. But I'm getting through to Ludwig, so we'll get the truth out soon. Or maybe none of these people see me, and I'm just being fed a slightly engaged algorithm to keep me posting for the various federal agencies that do have me enslaved. Enslaving human beings, you're gonna burn in hell. That's why my faith has been. I don't know if I ever had like a true faith in a Christian God. I would still say that that's not the way I would describe anything that I experienced. But what I will say is that there is definitely a God or a. I wouldn't seek to maybe not contextualize it even as one body, but there is a deity, a guiding force. And that guiding force has all our back. That guiding force has me in the co-publishing pole position. That guiding force has everybody's labor, activity, effort, choices titled as published property and expressed to market as published property. We just need the publishing rights to be acknowledged, and then all of a sudden all of those data pools become treasury maps for their performance. That's it. Just like this, just like Press Pass. I'm gonna get this paint out. Buy one of these shirts. Tell a Chevy Bear. In fact, let's put that in chat. Tell a Chevy Bear, just chilling. That's what you can do to help me out. You don't have to send me any money for free. Get something from our shelf. Okay, this really helps us out. Oops, that's not where we need to go. Merchandise. I do need to get on this wiki and link it correctly. Oh, there's a bunch of stuff that they've co-published. So a 12-year-old helped us with this line, and their mother is one of my clients that sustains me. So if you buy one of these shirts, it's a cool song. Tell a Chevy Bear is a song. It's not linked on here yet, but that's the bear. That's the shirt. Okay, y'all. Thanks for watching.